Andrea Bourne was a young woman full of life, dreams, and an infectious energy that made everyone around her feel special. At just 20 years old, she had a bright future. She grew up in a loving family that supported her ambitions and encouraged her to chase her goals. She was passionate about fashion and beauty, always excited to experiment with new styles and help her friends look their best. More than anything, Andrea had a kind heart. She was the type of person who would drop everything to help a friend in need. Her best friend, Ruth Pimentel, remembers Andrea as someone who was always laughing, always looking for an adventure. They were inseparable, sharing their secrets, hopes, and fears. Andrea had a strong sense of loyalty, sometimes to a fault, and she always wanted to see the best in people. Even when things got difficult, she believed that love and patience could fix anything. But some people, no matter how much they are loved, cannot be changed. Andrea had been in a rocky relationship with a man named J.L. Travis. He was controlling, jealous, and had a violent streak that scared her. She had confided in Ruth about the times he had threatened her, even put a gun to her head. But despite the warnings from her friends and family, she stayed. Maybe she thought he would change. Maybe she was afraid of what he might do if she left. But by the summer of 1997, Andrea had finally made up her mind. She was done with J.L. Travis. On July 4th, 1997, Andrea told Ruth she would be stopping by her house that evening. She was supposed to arrive with J.L., but she never made it. Ruth waited, growing more anxious with each passing hour. She called Andrea's phone repeatedly, but there was no answer. A pit formed in her stomach. Andrea was not the type to disappear without a word. The feeling of dread settled in. Something was wrong. That same night, California Highway Patrol Officer Ben Grassmuck was patrolling a lonely stretch of Highway 99. It was just before midnight when something caught his eye, flames flickering in the distance. As he got closer, he realized the fire was coming from an olive orchard just off the road. He followed the glow into the trees, unaware that he was about to stumble upon something horrifying. There, in the middle of the orchard, was a body. The flames consumed most of it, but the sight that stayed with Grassmuck forever was the victim's legs sticking up out of the fire. He knew immediately it was a woman, and he knew without a doubt that she had been murdered. Detective Kathy Starr was called to the scene. The victim's body had been burned extensively, making identification difficult. The victim was lying on her back, legs up and open. It was clear that whoever had dumped the body had chosen this remote location deliberately. There were no homes nearby and no traffic to witness the crime. This was a place where someone could dispose of a body and never be seen. Starr and her team combed the orchard for evidence. They found 2 sets of footprints in the dirt, one belonging to someone wearing socks, the other to a barefoot person. Nearby, there were tire tracks. They took photographs, knowing that these small details might be the key to finding the killer. Meanwhile, at the morgue, a pathologist determined that the victim had been shot twice in the head before being set on fire. The killer had hoped to destroy any evidence that could lead back to them, but even fire could not erase everything. Starr knew that if they could identify the victim, they could find the person responsible for her death. Back in town, Ruth Pimentel was frantic. She called the police, telling them that her best friend, Andrea Bourne, was missing. She knew Andrea had been with J.L. Travis that night, and she was terrified that something had happened to her. She also knew J.L.'s violent history, how he had been in and out of jail, how he had threatened Andrea before, and she had a gut feeling that he was responsible. Investigators listened carefully as Ruth described Andrea, 20 years old, 5 feet 9 inches tall, with blonde hair and blue eyes. The description was an exact match for the unidentified body found in the orchard. Dental records soon confirmed it. Andrea Bourne was dead. Detectives brought J.L. Travis in for questioning. He denied everything, claiming he had dropped Andrea off at home after a 4th of July pool party. but his demeanor gave him away. He was cold and detached, and his attempts at faking grief were almost laughable. Starr and her team knew he was lying, but without solid evidence they couldn't hold him. JL mentioned that his cousin, Kevin Mitchell, had been with him that night. When police tracked down Mitchell, his story was nearly identical to JL's, except for one small but crucial detail. He revealed that JL had been driving his other girlfriend's car that night. That girlfriend was Tracy Tavares, the mother of JL's 2 children. When police approached Tracy, she told them her car had been stolen just days after Andrea's murder. The timing was suspicious, but with no physical evidence linking the vehicle to the crime, there was nothing detectives could do. Frustrated, they were forced to let J.L. Travis go. For 3 years, Andrea's case went cold. Then, in 2000, Kevin Mitchell resurfaced, with a story to tell. Detective Vince Zavala had been working cold cases when he decided to re-examine Andrea's murder. He took another look at the evidence, determined to find something that had been overlooked. That's when he discovered that a set of fingerprints lifted from Tracy Tavares' car had never been analyzed. When they were finally run through the system, they matched Kevin Mitchell. With the threat of a grand theft auto charge hanging over his head, Kevin finally broke. He told detectives everything. On the night of July 4th, 1997, Kevin had been in the car with Andrea and JL. Everything seemed normal until JL suddenly pulled out a gun and shot Andrea in the head. She slumped forward in the passenger seat, blood pooling beneath her. Kevin was in shock. He had known his cousin was violent, but he never thought he was capable of murder. JL then drove to the olive orchard, pulled Andrea's body from the car, poured gasoline over her, and set her on fire. He left her there, her body burning in the night. Days later, he convinced Tracy to report her car stolen to cover his tracks. With Kevin's testimony, detectives finally had what they needed. In 2003, J.L. Travis was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. He pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 15 years to life. Tracy Tavares was charged with insurance fraud for filing a false stolen car report. She took a plea deal and served no jail time. Kevin Mitchell, despite his involvement, was never charged. For Andrea's family and friends, the news of JL's conviction was bittersweet. They had waited years for justice, but nothing could bring Andrea back. Ruth Pimentel, the best friend who had feared the worst from the start, felt a sense of closure but also anger. Andrea had tried to leave JL, but he had taken that choice away from her in the most brutal way possible. J.L. Travis was sent to a California correctional facility, where he remains to this day. For Andrea's loved ones, his punishment will never be enough. The only comfort they have is knowing that he will never be able to hurt anyone else the way he hurt Andrea. And so, the young woman who was once full of dreams and laughter became another tragic case, a victim of jealousy, control, and senseless violence. But in the end, she was not forgotten. The people who loved her never stopped fighting for justice, and because of them, Andrea Bourne's story was finally told. Her murder was not just an act of violence, it was a final attempt by a controlling man to exert power over her, even as she tried to break free. But justice, though delayed, was not denied. J.L. Travis thought he had gotten away with it. He thought the fire would erase his crime. He thought fear would keep people silent. But time and persistence proved him wrong. Thanks to the unwavering determination of Andrea's family, friends, and law enforcement officers, the truth emerged. Even after years of uncertainty, justice found its way to him. But Andrea's story is not just about justice. It's about the dangers of abusive relationships and the tragic consequences of ignoring the warning signs. Too often, victims feel trapped, believing that leaving will be more dangerous than staying. If there is one lesson to take from this heartbreaking case, It is that abuse should never be tolerated, and seeking help is not a sign of weakness. It is a fight for survival. If you or someone you know is in an abusive relationship, do not wait. There are resources available. Reach out to trusted friends, family, or organizations that can help. No one deserves to suffer in silence. Let Andrea's story be a reminder that love should never come at the cost of fear, control, or violence. Justice may have been served, but nothing can bring Andrea back. Her family will always mourn her, and her friends will never forget the light she brought into their lives. But in telling her story, in making sure her voice is heard, we can honor her memory and perhaps prevent another tragic loss. For the career she enjoyed and a partner she hoped to spend the rest of her life with, Kendra Hatcher was doing what she loved at the age of 35. The tragic reality is that a jealous lady would cut her life short and put an end to her bright future. Hatcher, a devoted Christian who was raised in Pleasant Plains, Illinois, went to college to pursue a degree in dentistry. She volunteered to assist in the construction of churches in other countries, taught Bible study, and provided free dental care to children in Ecuador. Hatcher was living in Dallas at the time, accepted a position at Smile Zone, which provided high-end dental service to kids from economically challenged families. During the same year, she began a relationship with Dr. Ricardo Ricky Paniagua, who was finishing up his dermatology residency at the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center. Hatcher and Paniagua had barely been dating for 3 months when they began talking about getting married. They made plans to travel to Cancun for Labor Day. Things were going exceptionally well for Hatcher up until September 2nd, 2015. Hashem Said was in the parking garage at Gables Park 17, the luxury complex where Hatcher resided. On that particular day, he heard screaming. "It was pure fear, and then I heard pop, pop," he said. Saad noticed a Jeep Cherokee leaving the garage at high speed. He jumped into his car and drove away as soon as it appeared safe. "As I was going out of the ramp, I could see her body," he said. Saad dialed 911 to report the incident to authorities. Emergency crews responded quickly but were unsuccessful in saving the victim, later named as Kendra Hatcher, who was pronounced dead at the scene. Bullet fragments and the pistol magazine were discovered near Hatcher's body, indicating that she was shot. Her handbag was nowhere to be found, but her smartphone had been left behind. Despite the fact that the murder had all the signs of a robbery gone terribly wrong, the way in which the bullets were fired suggested this was a hit. According to Abe Santiago, a former crime scene analyst, the entry wound came from the upper part of the head and exited through the chin. The gunshot residue on her hands indicated that she had her hands up and behind her head at the time of the shooting. The arrival of a black Jeep Grand Cherokee at Gables Park 17 was captured on security cameras at 7:15 p.m., just minutes before the murder. Somewhere around 7:42, the victim, Kendra Hatcher, pulls into the parking garage. There was no doubt that that individual was waiting for Dr. Hatcher. As soon as she pulled in, he began making his move. The gunman can be seen strolling near Hatcher's car and then going back to the Jeep, which subsequently drives away from the scene. The motorist, who happened to be a woman, was recorded on camera. On the following day, images of the vehicle and its driver were disseminated to the media in the hopes of identifying the individuals. 2 days after releasing the surveillance footage of the crime, investigators received a call from Jose Luis Ortiz. He claimed that his vehicle was captured on security camera footage 2 days earlier. On the day of the murder, he said he had lent his Jeep to Brenda Delgado, a friend of his. He maintained he had nothing to do with the crime. He stated that he and Delgado were eating dinner at a restaurant when the murder occurred. In order to question Delgado regarding the killing of Kendra Hatcher, she was brought to the police station. she stated in her recorded interview. "I've never seen her." When Delgado was questioned about where she was on the night Kendra Hatcher was murdered, she supplied her meal receipt from Chili's. Detective Bourne said that when he questioned Delgado about the Jeep, her reaction was, "I gave it to my friend Crystal." Upon being taken in for questioning, Crystal Cortez, a 23-year-old mother of two, confessed to operating the getaway vehicle on the night of the homicide. She stated she was with her son when an armed carjacker forced her to drive to the crime scene. Cortez claimed that the gunman exited the vehicle, and she subsequently heard gunshots. The shooter returned to the car and requested to be taken to another area of Dallas before fleeing. However, surveillance footage revealed that neither she nor her kid were in the car at the time of the murder, nor did she attempt to flee when the gunman exited the vehicle. Cortez altered her account in response to these inconsistencies. Cortez now claims she drove the gunman willingly, but was unaware he was planning to shoot Hatcher. She said it was merely a robbery. He was just going to jack her, that's it. "I don't know this dude," said Cortez to investigators when she was questioned about her involvement in the crime. She said it was Delgado's idea. Cortez stated to detectives when asked why Delgado would arrange Hatcher's robbery. "I think that they were going back and forth between the same guy." Delgado had an on-again, off-again relationship with Ricky Paniagua from 2012 to the start of 2015. They had resided together for a period, and she had actually gotten pregnant by him, albeit she subsequently had an abortion. Delgado cyberstalked both her ex-boyfriend and his new girlfriend using social media postings and hacking Paniagua's email account. Cortez stated that Delgado promised her $500 if she would steal Hatcher's pocketbook. She admitted that Brenda paid her to be the getaway driver. "So we had enough to arrest her that night for murder. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough evidence to place Brenda in custody. So the only thing that I had to work with was an unpaid traffic ticket, and we did arrest her for the unpaid traffic ticket," Barnes said. The shooter's name was Lamar, and he owned a blue Chrysler Sebring, according to Cortez, who also provided his phone number. While the name turned out to be a fabrication, the phone number led to a Dallas location with a blue Sebring sitting in front. Christopher Love, 31, was the owner of the vehicle. Love was detained on a warrant out of Memphis, Tennessee on September 30th, 2015. Authorities discovered a pistol stashed in a side section of his automobile. It was the gun used to kill Kendra Hatcher, according to ballistic studies. According to Love, Delgado stated that she was affiliated with Mexico's major drug cartels. She promised to reward him with both narcotics and money. Christopher Love has been arrested and is facing capital murder charges. He was convicted and sentenced to death in October 2018. Brenda Delgado was released on bail on September 5th, 2015. She then caught a bus and attempted to flee the country. She was placed on the FBI's list of the 10 most wanted, and a $100,000 reward was announced for information leading to her capture. She was apprehended in April 2016 in Torreon, Coahuila. Mexico guaranteed in her extradition arrangement that she would not face the death sentence. In 2019, Crystal Cortez pled guilty to murder and testified in court against Love and Delgado. In return for a 35-year sentence, 2 weeks after I met Brenda, we started planning this murder. Cortez testified at Delgado's murder trial that year. On June 7, 2019, a jury found Brenda Delgado guilty of capital murder. Upon conviction, she was sentenced to life without parole. Nicole Smith was a bright, loving 14-year-old girl with her whole life ahead of her. She grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, in a tight-knit community that valued family and togetherness. Nicole was known for her infectious laughter, her strong spirit, and her drive to succeed. She excelled in school and had a passion for writing, dreaming of one day becoming a journalist. Her mother, Deborah Smith, recalls how Nicole loved to help around the house and would spend hours talking about her future. Her teachers admired her work ethic, and her friends cherished her kindness. She was the type of person who made an impact on everyone she met. On June 7th, 1995, Nicole woke up early as usual, ready for school. She left the house with her younger sister and a group of friends, walking along the familiar path that led to Bunch Middle School. It was a normal day. Nothing seemed out of place. But before she reached the school, she realized she had forgotten something at home. She told her sister and friends she'd catch up, then turned back alone. That was the last time anyone saw Nicole Smith alive. Nicole never made it home. Minutes after she turned back, the sounds of gunshots echoed through the neighborhood. Residents reported hearing the sudden, sharp cracks coming from a wooded area near the path. Some thought it might have been firecrackers. Others knew better. Her mother became worried when Nicole didn't show up at school. She called the school office, but they hadn't seen her either. Panic set in. Deborah immediately contacted the police, but deep down, she feared the worst. Later that morning, a jogger made a gruesome discovery in the woods, a young girl lying lifeless on the ground. She had been brutally raped and shot twice in the head. It was Nicole. The news spread quickly, shaking the community to its core. A promising young girl's life had been stolen most horrifically. Police launched a massive investigation. They canvassed hundreds of homes, interviewed residents, and searched for anyone who may have seen something. Witnesses recalled hearing the shots but had no idea who was responsible. The path where she was attacked was often used by students and locals. It wasn't an area where a random predator would stake out. Detectives worked tirelessly, but the case soon went cold. For years, Nicole's family held on to hope that justice would come. Her mother never stopped seeking answers. But without a suspect, without a solid lead, it seemed like Nicole's killer had vanished without a trace. Then, 9 years later, in 2004, a chilling discovery would reopen the case. On June 20th, 2004, a 13-year-old girl was walking alone in East Point, Georgia, when she was attacked and raped in a wooded lot. She survived, and this time, police recovered DNA from the suspect. When they ran the DNA through the system, it was a match, an exact match, to the DNA found at Nicole Smith's crime scene. After nearly a decade of silence, the killer had resurfaced. Cold case detectives now had a crucial piece of evidence. They knew their suspect was still out there. And now they had a profile. Detectives Vince Velasquez and Russell Popham took over the case, determined to track down the man who had evaded justice for years. They began combing through old records, re-interviewing witnesses, and analyzing school absentee lists from the day Nicole was murdered. They honed in on possible suspects, including a man named Stephen Burris, whose past crimes made him a person of interest. But when DNA results came back, Burris was not a match. Again, the case went cold. For another 17 years, the killer remained unknown. Then, in 2022, an incredible breakthrough finally led detectives to the man they had been hunting for nearly 27 years. DNA technology had advanced significantly, and forensic genealogists were able to use genetic profiling to track the suspect's lineage. The results pointed to a man named Kevin Arnold, a 49-year-old who had lived in the same Atlanta neighborhood in 1995. Arnold had never been on the police radar. He had managed to stay hidden for decades, living an ordinary life while carrying a horrific secret. When detectives confronted him, he denied any involvement. But the science didn't lie. A direct DNA comparison confirmed that Arnold was the man responsible for both crimes. On June 28, 2022, Kevin Arnold was arrested and charged with the murder of Nicole Smith and the 2004 rape in East Point. The trial was swift. In 2023, Arnold pleaded guilty to all charges. The court sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He was transferred to the Georgia Diagnostic and Classification Prison, where he will serve the rest of his days. For Nicole's mother, justice had finally been served. She spent 27 years fighting for answers, never giving up on her daughter's case. When the verdict was read, she wept, tears of sorrow, relief, and closure. The community that once lived in fear could now breathe again. The man who had stolen Nicole's future was finally where he belonged. Arnold himself showed little remorse. In court, he offered no apology, no explanation. His family, blindsided by the revelation, struggled to come to terms with the truth. For years he had lived among them as a father, a brother, a friend. Now he was a convicted murderer. Nicole Smith's case stands as a testament to the power of persistence, to the unwavering dedication of detectives who never let go of a cold case, and to a mother's love that never wavered, even in the face of unimaginable loss. Though Nicole is gone, her story lives on. Her name is not forgotten, and justice, no matter how long it takes, always finds its way. Today, Arnold sits behind bars, stripped of his freedom, just as he stripped Nicole of hers. The verdict brought relief, but it can never bring back the bright, ambitious girl whose life was stolen that morning in 1995. Cold cases like Nicole's prove that justice, no matter how delayed, is still possible. But there are countless other families still waiting, hoping for answers. If you have information about an unsolved crime, speak up. If you see something suspicious, report it. Time doesn't erase the truth, and as we've seen, it doesn't erase justice either.